everyone, and a very good evening. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now. I'm Mubina Kapasi. Well, in today's episode, a truncated episode of the show, we thought of keeping our focus on the gig economy, the freelancers, the budget of 2021 as well, shone the spotlight on that section of the population, a large one at that, of course, especially during the lockdown. A lot of people left their mainstay jobs, took up freelancing. However, the one part where they did lag is proper financial planning. And I think for this section, it's even more crucial that they get into proper financial planning mode, because we do have, that as freelancers, there are significant number of vagaries when it comes to income. When you are salaried, it's easy. You know what you're going to get at the end of every month or at the beginning of a new month. But when you are a freelancer, 1 month would be great, but the next one, not so much. So all the more it's imperative that such individuals have a proper financial plan for themselves in place. What's more, when you are in a structured job, when you're employed, you do have a good amount of savings for your retirement, which is in a way taken care of by your employer, your India Inc. However, that does not really happen in a case of a freelancer. It's not in auto mode. You have to actively take part in ensuring that you save enough for your retirement. So as a gig worker, as a freelancer, your financial profile is extremely different from what it usually would be, and hence all the more a reason why you must ensure that you have a proper plan in place. So if you don't, then this is the interview for you. I have with me Prableen Bajpai, founder of FinFix, joining in on the show. Prableen, thank you so much for taking out time today on ET Now and talking to us. So to start with, Prableen, let's understand from you then. I mean, I think, would you agree with, whatever I said, that, that for a freelancer, why financial planning is perhaps even more imperative than somebody at a regular job?
Yeah. Hi, Mubina. Good evening, and thanks for having me on the show. Absolutely, very correctly pointed out, Mubina, that it's very, very crucial, in fact, for freelancers or for the gig workers to, plan their finances or to have a financial planning in place. In fact, the economic survey this time actually mentioned that, there has been a significant growth in the gig economy. So, more number of people who have joined this. And if you're talking about, I'll just quickly define when we say gig workers, who are we talking about? So we're talking basically about people who are self-employed. We're talking about independent consultant contributors, freelancers, and part-time workers. And Mubina, here the difference, as you said, a salaried person would get his salary at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month. And they've always had some part of their, income going into compulsory savings in the form of EPF, which is missing for this cohort. So, a few other differences here, because there is no company-backed insurance given to them, health insurance or life cover. They really don't have medical leaves. They don't have paid leaves. So because of all these reasons, it's very important for this, segment of our population who are working to plan their finances very well. And the approach has to be slightly different in their case.
Yeah, exactly. So then would you say, Prableen, that maybe the amount of risk as well that this category of individuals can take would be lower than what others could take?
Absolutely, because I feel that there's always a bit of a hesitation to commit, Mubina, to any kind of, let's say, long-term savings, or to even commit towards, home loan and things like that. So the way a personal finance for a person who belongs to this segment has to be different, and broadly outline how it should be done. So of course, financial planning, irrespective of the job profile, has to be there. But because the inflow every month is irregular, such people need to look at the average, let's say, of a year, and figure out what monthly income actually are they earning. Because let's take an example: somebody is earning 50,000 a month out of a freelance job. The next month he or she is earning 40,000. The next month the projects are not there, just earning 20,000, and they may be a bumper earning as well of say 70 or 80,000 per month. So the average has to be seen. And I feel from that average also, let's say if the average works out to be about 50,000 a month, it's good to kind of reduce it by another 15-20%. So if you reduce it by 20%, that means a 40,000 kind of a monthly income is what they should consider. And here, one very important thing is that there have to be like two accounts that person is maintaining. One into which all the money is coming from the various jobs they are doing. And then from there, once they figure out this particular number, that part should be actually paid to themselves into another account which they maintain.
Understood. All right. Okay, so I think that's another special characteristic, if you could call it that, for for freelancers, for gig workers, and yeah, like you mentioned, the budget as well did touch base upon that. Do you think that the one area, especially where freelancers really lag, is saving enough for the future? Because many a times we tend to live month to month, project to project. That as well happens sometimes, right? So you sort of tend to look at a more long-term picture, and it's understandable, right? Because you're busy in the day-to-day life of being able to build your profile, getting more clients, so on and so forth. So it's understandable. So these individuals have to proactively take part in building their savings nest, whether it's for retirement or for whatever purpose. So what is this first step they need to take in that regard, Prableen?
Absolutely. That's absolutely true, Mobina. So, I think the first step is, and which something COVID has also taught even the salaried people, is to have an emergency corpus in place. And this has to be at least 12 months of basic expenses for this segment, for workers from the gig economy. It has to be basic expenses, including any kind of EMIs which are going, as well as any investments that they're doing. Let's say they're doing certain SIPs, so that figure should be included, as well as premiums for any insurance policies. So this has to be maintained for the next 1 year at least. That's the basic. Second, Mobina, because there is no company-backed insurance or life cover which is provided, or health cover which is provided, these people have to definitely buy it themselves, which is very important. Otherwise, they'll have to dip into their long-term savings to provide for, let's say, a health emergency. Thirdly, of course, they need to do the budgeting. And like I mentioned, that the average savings, income has to be seen. You deflate it by a little, pay yourself that amount, and then from that amount, that will always give the confidence, because that figure is lesser than the average they would be earning. So I think that can give them a bit of flexibility and peace of mind that, okay, whatever he or she is committing is way within what they would end up earning. And based on that, then they do their financial planning on a regular model, just the way we do for every regular individual who's in a salaried job or in a government job, where you define your goals, you give them what's the amount that you're looking to save, and based on that you commit your investments. You do your monthly SIPs or open a PPF based on your financial goals. And of course, retirement is a very, very important. And, Mobina, it may sound very little, but I always give this example that even a small investment of 1,000 rupees a month can actually give you about 27 lakhs in the next 30 years, considering a very nominal 11% return. If you're just putting 1,000 also, let's say in an index fund today. So, that's how it works. Compounding works. So starting early, little commitment on a monthly basis is very, very essential, especially for long-term goals here.
All right. Okay, we'll continue this conversation. Prableen, request you to just bear with us and stay on. We'll be back with lots more on this entire topic. Stay tuned. Quick break. Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now, where we are in conversation with Prableen on essentially financial planning for the gig economy for freelancers as well. So Prableen, before I move on to the questions and queries that our viewers have sent in, let me ask you, what would be the investment options that you would recommend for our gig workers and freelancers?
Okay. Broadly, Mubina, I think two instruments can actually just work for them. One is your public provident fund, because of course they are not eligible for EPF. So public provident fund gives them the fixed income portfolio and mutual funds on the other side, of which can be a combination of debt and equity based on the goals that they have. Other than these two, NPS can be considered. For those who want to invest in a combination, they can choose themselves which plan do they want from NPS. Just that they have to understand that at the time of maturity, a certain part of it has to be 40% will be going in as an annuity which will be paid to them. So it's slightly restrictive there, but I think these two options, PPF broadly and mutual funds, can do the trick for them.
All right, excellent. Well, meantime, we've received a couple of questions and queries then from our viewers. Many of them, of course, are freelancers. So let's get to answering them and, helping out our viewers. Remember, folks, you can always email us on themoneyshow@etnow.tv. Let's take on board our first question. Lamya Arsiwala asks, as a 25-year-old freelance content creator with no expense as such to speak of, because she lives with her parents, how can I invest my money? Just have a couple of fixed deposits lying around in my name, which I have created at the behest of the parents. All right, unsurprising really. She's got no expenses, but she doesn't have any investments either. Just a few FDs, which like I say, is usually the first port of call for a lot of Indian investors. So how would you start her off, Prableen?
I'm happy to know, Mubina, that there is no LIC policy, at least as of now. Usually parents do push for that as well. So I think what Lamya should do, because if she's staying with the parents, she can just divide her monthly investment, whatever amount she can invest, into three buckets. One can be for the near term, probably a vacation that she's planning, let's say after 6 months. So something for the near term goals, then something for the medium term, which can be, probably buying a car or moving out to another city, saving for that. And the third is for her retirement and long-term goals. And Lamya, though she's staying with the parents, but Mubina, I would definitely recommend that she should again build a emergency corpus. So she has some FDs, but then she should define that money and put it separately as an FD or in a liquid fund, as well as look at options of health insurance for herself. And for these different goals that I've just mentioned, the near term, medium term, and long term, she should again choose a public provident fund in combination with mutual funds. I think that should broadly, suffice.
Okay, all right. So I hope Lamya has listened in to what what you've recommended and curates a portfolio for herself accordingly. Okay, Upasna asks, can I open a provident fund in my name? I am not employed. Why? And also she asks, why is the EPF rate better than PPF? Okay, so just for the benefit of all our viewers, probably if you could sort of differentiate between EPF, PPF, how are they different? And of course, that whole difference in the rates as well, because it's quite big. In PPF, it's 7% around, a little north of 7%, whereas EPF FY20's rate was 8.5%.
Right. So Upasna has made a very interesting observation, in fact, Mubina. So yes, she can firstly open a PPF in her name if she has her PAN and she is an adult. For a minor, the parent can open. EPF, the Employee Provident Fund, is basically for a salaried person, where he or she contributes a part of their income and the equivalent amount is contributed by the employer. While a public provident fund is open to any citizen working or non-working, a housewife, anybody, this can be over and above your EPF, where you can invest up to 1.5 lakhs in every financial year and earn about 7.1% currently. And it works on the principle of compounding, and all your final receipts are tax-free. In case of EPF, there was recently not really a limitation on how much they could put. Now there is a capping of 2.5 lakhs from the how much an employee can put. Beyond that, whatever they put, that will attract an interest, and taxation on the interest amount. So that's broadly the differentiation. And Mubina, coming to the question of why there is a difference between these, the two rates. So public provident fund, the rates are broadly in line with the bond yields and how the fixed, deposit rates are moving. So in nutshell, guided by the interest rates in the economy as set by the RBI in terms of repo, reserve repo. And they are set quarterly they change. EPF, why it is so high? This is slightly tricky. Because there's a lot of, say of trade unions are involved because it's the, big companies, their employees' money is going into it. And it also enjoys a kind of, let's say, political patronage. So somewhere that has been offering a higher percentage. That's, to me, that is the logic for the difference which is there between the two rates.
All right. Well, a tricky question to ask, but thank you so much, Prableen, for sort of explaining that for all of our viewers and for joining us today on ET Now. And with that, we're completely out of time, so we will have to wrap it up. Thank you for watching.